Thanks for staying with us on What Now. Let's turn attention to a different kind of war. The UN Security Council has passed a US-drafted resolution that aims to move beyond the fragile truce in Gaza to a more sustainable peace and the reconstruction of the devastated enclave. The 15-member council voted 13-0 in favor of the resolution, with abstentions by Russia and China, which declined to use their veto power to block the measure. The resolution was intended to add international legitimacy to U.S. President Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza plan. Reacting, President Trump commended the United Nations Security Council, acknowledging and endorsing the Board of Peace.
First step, we cannot iron out everything, but I hope that with the commitment of the United States and all the other stakeholders in the region there, we'll be able to iron out some of the issues that are still you are asking to know about. At this point in time, it is too early to want to propose or prescribe, but I think there is commitment and we should all support that.
The United Nations Security Council has just adopted the United States-sponsored resolution on Gaza that does something we haven't seen in generations. It provides a real, actionable pathway to lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis.
International law expert Livingstone Weche joins me on What Now to discuss the United Nations Security Council's latest approval on Gaza. Good to have you join us, Livingstone.
Thanks for having me.
So 14 votes in favor, 0 against, Russia and China abstaining, quite different from the use of veto we have seen recently when it comes to the ceasefire, trying to get a ceasefire in the Middle East. What's your reading of this?
Well, it's an unprecedented development in international politics. This proposal came up sometimes last year sometime this year by the President Donald Trump, a 20-point peace plan. And now the UN Security Council, same UN, which had condemned Israel's intervention and how the war has turned out, raising issues of humanitarian crisis and genocidal acts and so on, has created a platform for the approval through the United Nations Security Council to ensure that there is a ceasefire. And not only will there be a ceasefire, but there will be a transitional government to cater to the immediate administrative needs of Gaza as a roadmap towards a lasting peace. Now, at this point, I don't think anyone should be tilting the apple cart, because peace never comes without a price. And any peace that comes as a result of an initial war has the potentiality of resulting in a sustained progress and development going forward. So looking at the proposals that have been made, and also considering China and Russia's abstinence, they have raised concerns that the 20-point plan and the resolution does not capture the right to self-determination and the role of Palestine on this particular roadmap. China and Russia appear to be playing the same card. But you see again, this is international politics. A co-big brother, United States, has submitted a proposal. China and Russia have stylishly abstained, not because they mean so well or they mean anything differently, but you see at the level of international politics, the interest of these superpowers, they are christened, go above the interest of the smaller nations. So the U.S. would not, at this point, be working in isolation. There must be a measure of concession with these other states. But the most interesting part is the controversy and the contradictions now arising. Hamas rejecting this resolution.
I just want to quickly, before we move to Livingstone, before we move to all of the controversy and the reaction from Israel and Hamas, I want to sort of stay on the abstention by Russia and China, and in terms of international legitimacy for this plan. Does this sort of have any implication?
Implications. No implications. This is like a signed, sealed, and delivered deal at the United Nations Security Council. That's the highest power decision-making body of the universe, United Nations Security Council. Russia is a member. They were not denied voting rights. China is a member. They were not denied the voting rights. It's more like trying to boycott an election. It doesn't stop the election from taking place or allowing the results or the outcome from being legitimate. So there will always be rooms for concessions at some point, because these three nations played critical roles, either directly or indirectly, in this particular conflict, as they call it. The point is that there is now a resolution. The point of contradiction is where Hamas is saying that there is a replacement of Israel with a sort of foreign guardianship, international occupation away from Israel, more like sustaining the same type of system that they have continued to protest against through arms. And on the converse, ground that it gives room for the Palestinian Authority to exercise its right to self-determination. So you can see the contradictions. But the point is, there will always be those departures in the course of implementing this type of resolution. The other concern is the timeline within which this particular implementation of the Board of Peace and the International Stabilization Force will have their way in the Gaza Strip. There is no timeline. If you ask me in an ordinary sense, I don't think America is in a haste. Once this particular plan begins to be implemented, I don't think America is in a haste to leave that region. Because if you listen to the wordings of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, he says Gaza will be demilitarized, Hamas will be disarmed, which is their own major point of objection. And so America is saying not only will that happen, but that there will be a redevelopment of Gaza. There will be opportunity for the militant groups, that's the militia Hamas, who are willing to lay down arms to gain amnesty. Now, if you ask me...
Let me quickly come in. Sorry, I just wanted to raise it because I don't want us to leave this issue. You've raised the point or the point of contradiction, that Hamas has. But Israel also has one, which is that certain elements have now been introduced to this plan, which has to do with the two-state solution. It gives the notion that in the future there is going to be a two-state solution, and Israel really has opposed that. In terms of the opposition to this bill by both sides, what does that mean for the ease of implementation of this plan?
I don't see the two-state solution proposal coming to play. I might be wrong, but I don't see it coming to play. I see this concept that Israel has christened international or foreign guardianship holding sway for a very long time. Because the level of conflict, America has said that it will not allow a militarized Gaza or an armed Hamas to remain in that region to become a threat to its neighbors. And Hamas does not seem to be a repentant or a willing group that is ready to submit or subscribe to any form of subservience. So at this point, the only way forward for now may give room for international occupation to rule over that territory, govern over the region for a very long time, and it may continue until such a time that it becomes practically possible. It becomes practical for all the parties to sit together to say they will give an avenue where Hamas or the authorities in Gaza and Palestine will sit down with the authorities of Israel to work out a harmonious political solution. That is actually a long walk to freedom, because of the level of hostility and animosity
We seem to be having a network challenge there with Livingstone. He was speaking to the issues raised by both Hamas and Israel on the Gaza peace plan as proposed by the U.S. president, which has now been adopted by the United Nations Security Council, sort of giving it an international legitimacy. Although Russia and China have abstained from that vote. Analysts, including Livingstone Wiche, had earlier also said that, look, that doesn't sort of have any implication for the implementation. But I just want to check one more time. We will have Livingstone. Livingstone, you were sort of breaking. We lost connection with you rather for a moment. I just wanted to ask you, we didn't hear you, some of the things you said. You just added to my next question. Does this sort of, in terms of progress in the Middle East, not just for this war, but a lasting peace in the Middle East, has any progress been made now that there is an international legitimacy being given to the Gaza peace plan?
Started by saying it's an unprecedented development in international politics, particularly now that you have the buy-in of the Middle East. Countries like you have Azerbaijan, you have Saudi Arabia and others buying into as well as voting in support of this resolution by way of giving it the backing. I think progress has been made. No country exists in isolation. So the challenge going forward will be the issue raised by the dissenting opinion on this matter, which is that how long will this board of peace and the international stabilization force operate in Gaza? What is because there appears to be some loopholes, some loose ends in the resolution that have not taken care of the structuring, the modalities for implementation and the operational mechanisms in place on how this will be achieved, who will be involved, what will be the role of the interested parties in this conflict. Those parts of the resolution have not been tied, so there is a need to tighten up the nozzles so as to give transparency and accountability in the implementation of this resolution. Is very, very vital, or else you now give room for a forever and a perpetual. The biggest success of this resolution, once it comes into effect, is that there will be a demilitarization of Gaza, there will be a disarmament of Hamas, and there will be a neutral government system, particularly for the peace and the well-being of the citizens of Palestine who are residents in the Gaza Strip. Lives can no longer go down needlessly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, as always. International law expert Livingstone Wiche, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
All right, that's What Now. For more updates on the stories we're monitoring, you can visit our website, www.tvcnews.tv. You can also follow us on our social media handles. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and on X at TVC News NG. We also have updates for you on WhatsApp and Telegram at TVC News Nigeria. On YouTube, we're live at TVC News Nigeria. Thanks for watching. I am Precious Amayu.